Morning, everybody, and thanks for the kind introduction. So in this talk, I'm going to show you how computational simulations can be used to investigate the photoisomerization reactions of molecules called light-driven rotary motors. So light-driven rotary motors are molecules which are able to convert the energy of the absorbed light into rotation. And for this reason, they are key components of the so-called artificial molecular machines, because they represent the power sources of these nanometer-sized devices. And the earliest molecular motors were developed by the Nobel laureate Feringa. And these motors are called overcrowded alkene motors, and they are made of generally of two moieties connected by a carbon-carbon double bond. And the operational mode of these motors consists of four main steps. We have two photochemical reactions called the cis-trans photoisomerization, in which we have the isomerization of the central carbon-carbon double bond. And in between these two photochemical reactions, we have two thermal steps called helix inversions, in which the helicity of the motors is inverted. And among the Feringa motors, we can distinguish at least two classes. The early developed motors are the so-called first-generation motors, and they are characterized by high yield of forward photoisomerization, but they suffer from low rotation rates. And this motivated the development of a second class of motors called the second-generation motors, in which the rotation rates are higher, but the yields of the photochemical reactions are much lower. So a promising strategy to develop more efficient motors would be to combine the favorable photochemical properties of first-generation motors with the high rates of second-generation motors. But to do so, we first need to understand in detail the operational mode of these motors. And actually, at the current state of research, the photochemical reaction of Feringa motors are still unclear. And this motivated us to investigate the photoisomerization reactions in a prototypical first-generation rotary motor. This rotary motor was investigated by spectroscopic techniques, and from the spectroscopic investigation, it turns out that after the photoexcitation, we have a fast relaxation of the Frank-Condon bright state to a second bright state with a reduced emission rate, which then is converted to a dark excited state, which then decay to the ground state. But there are still several open questions. In particular, we don't know the nature of the excited state involved in the excited state dynamics of this motor. We don't know the mechanism of excited state decay, and more importantly, we don't know the origin for the high yields of forward photoisomerization and the low yield for the reverse reaction, which makes this motor primed for efficient forward rotation. So in order to address this open question, we use the computational strategy, combining quantum chemical calculations with non-adiabatic dynamic simulations. In the quantum chemical calculation, we used the recently developed mixed reference spin-flip TDDFT method, which actually solves the spin contamination problem of spin-flip TDDFT. And for the non-adiabatic dynamic simulations, we used the mixed quantum classical trajectory surface hopping method, this time with potential energy surfaces computed with the reparametrized semi-empirical method, which was reparametrized in order to reproduce the previously computed data with the mixed reference spin-flip TDDFT method. And these calculations were performed with the recently published semi-empirical code MOPAC-P. So in the first step, we computed the vertical excitation energies of the motors for the two ground state isomers with two methods, the mixed reference spin-flip TDDFT method and the ab initio quasi-degenerate NERPT2. Both methods predict that the S1 state is the bright is the lowest optically bright state, while S2 is dark and well separated in energy with S1. So now that we know that the S1 state is the optically bright state, this will be the state that will be populated after photoexcitation. And so we can, in the second step, perform a relaxed scan in the S1 state from the cis isomer to the trans isomer. And from this relaxed scan, we found these energy profiles in which we can see that the S1 potential energy surfaces is characterized by the presence of 3 minima. We have 2 bright minima closer to the ground state isomers, and we have a dark minimum associated with a largely twisted geometry. And at this largely twisted geometry, we also see that the topography of the S0 potential energy surfaces is sloped toward the trans isomer. Next, we performed non-adiabatic dynamic simulations. After excitation of the cis isomer, we found that the main process is the S1 to S0 internal conversion with the exponential, single exponential decay of the S1 population, with the lifetime of S1 in quite good agreement with the experimental lifetime. We also computed in this simulation the fluorescence emission, and here we see that we have a fast decay of this fluorescence emission that we assign to the fast decay of the Frank-Condon bright state, which is followed by a slower decay of a weaker emissive state. To understand the origin of this weaker emissive state, we actually analyzed the molecular geometries visited along the surface hopping trajectories. We see that the initial distribution of surface hopping trajectories is split after the relaxation of the Frank-Condon state to populate the 3 minima. And the bright minima give rise to the weaker emissive intermediate state. Instead, the S1 to S0 transitions only occur at the dark, largely twisted minimum. At this largely twisted dark minimum, we also observe the so-called sudden polarization of the motor, in particular a charge transfer between the 2 halves, which is actually known with regard to cis-trans photoisomerization, but observed for the first time with regard to molecular motors. And since the S1 to S0 transition occur at largely twisted geometries, that is essentially halfway between the 2 ground state isomers, we can conclude that the photoisomerization yields are mainly determined by the shape, the topography of the S0 potential energy surfaces at this S1 to S0 OPS region. And in fact, since this topography is highly selective for the trans isomer, we obtain high yield of photoisomerization in good agreement with the experimental values. We also investigated the excited state dynamics of the motor after excitation of the trans isomer. The results that we obtained are actually qualitatively similar to the ones obtained after excitation of the cis isomer. We have a single exponential decay of several tenths of picosecond of the S1 state, and again a fast relaxation of the Frank-Condon bright state followed by a slower decay of a weaker emissive state. Also in this simulation, the S1 to S0 transition occurred at the same dark, largely twisted minimum, and therefore the photoisomerization yields are determined by the same S0 potential energy topography. And therefore the photoisomerization yield for this reverse reaction is much lower, actually only 10%, again in agreement with the experimental value. So now we are in the, we can actually propose an interpretation of the spectroscopic findings. In our simulation, we, in agreement with the, in line with the spectroscopic findings, we have a fast relaxation of the initially populated Frank-Condon state. And this actually relaxation leads to the formation of the S1 minima, The bright minima give rise to this intermediate bright state with, associated with a reduced emission rate. Instead, the spectroscopically observed dark state can be associated with the dark S1 minimum. And our simulation also showed that the S1 to S0 transition only occurred from this S1 dark minimum. And we also, and our simulation also showed that the photoisomerization yields are determined by the S0 potential energy topography. And since this topography is selective for the trans-isomer, this motor, the yields for the forward photoisomerization is much higher than the yield for the reverse reaction. So I want to thank the people involved in my Polonez BIS project, in particular my project mentor, Dr. Joanna Jankowska, the two master students involved in the project, the organizer for giving me the opportunity to present this work, and you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Davide, by the way, congratulations on obtaining the Polonez BIS. It's not an easy one, so this is really an achievement. Very nice talk. I would love to ask many questions, but first I will accept questions from the audience. So we have Saikat.
Very, very nice talk. I am just wondering, did you look at the energy gap distribution at your hopping geometries?
Yeah, maybe no, I did not show here, but it's consistent with this energy gap.
Okay, so
between 1.5 and 1 EV. Yeah.
So okay, so it means that there is no conical intersections involved.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Another question, in general, if I may, Rafael?
Yes, please do.
Okay. A general question about these semi-empirical model. So you reparameterize the semi-empirical potential for this rotor, or it is general?
Exactly. I reparameterized the semi-empirical method in order to reproduce the mixed reference spin flip results. This is the comparison, so solid line the mixed reference spin flip data, dash line the semi-empirical.
That's correct, and that's very good. But I'm wondering, what's your comment? Can you use this semi-empirical method as a on-go method that you don't want to reparameterize? So can you rely on this method?
Yeah, my experience is that if you want to get accurate results, you have every time to reparameterize them.
Yeah,
and even
I couldn't agree more. Every time I want to use this exactly this MOPAC, and I am failing. So I have to reparameterize again for this my special system of interest.
Yes, exactly. But then once you have reparameterized semi-empirical methods, you can actually reach simulation time of several picoseconds, and this is the advantage.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions here? No one? So a quick question. So you have a fairly long time scale of photoisomerization. So what limits this photoisomerization time? Is it a barrier somewhere, or is it a sloped topography of the conical intersection?
We have two effects. One is the barrier, which traps the population for several picoseconds in the bright minima. And the additional reason is the quite large S1 to S0 gap along the path. Yeah.
Thank you. Very nice talk. Let's thanks once again, Davide.